Loud, my instructions say.
This
Okay,
meeting is being recorded.
share screen. And here it is. We're going to start there. Now I'm going to suggest that if you have a question anytime during this, shout out, because I'm going to put my view of the people attending on minimum, so I can see my whole screen. And don't be afraid to jump in and ask questions or make comments or whatever. So I'm going to minimize my screen. I always start any of my presentations with this scenario. I usually hear chuckles because it really, a good photograph really has nothing to do with the camera. It has totally to do with the photographer, or almost totally due to with the photographer. So I hope you've all had a chance to read this. Have your little chuckle. I've been taking photographs since I was about 10. My dad helped me set up a darkroom in the basement. My photos were awful. My subjects were usually 50 feet away, and my photos were terrible. But I kept at it on and off, and I really got interested in photography when I got my first SLR in 1966 or 1967. And I took a bunch of photography courses and got some lucky shots. And these are 3 of them, actually 3 of my favorites. And I never really knew why, but as we go through the steps I'm going to show you today, I may come back to these, and then we can determine why I like them so much. And these are all film shots, by the way. These are all film. None of them are digital. It wasn't until I joined the Camera Club in 2006 and started taking classes. At that time, this class was a 12-week class. And the club, I hope you all know, offers, or at least when we all get back together, a lot of classes from very, very talented and knowledgeable members. We've got lots of them that belong to the club, and they are very willing to share their knowledge with you. But once I joined the club, my photos started to get better. But when I thought about teaching as part of this course, I started to think about what one thing would really help people make their photos better. And I determined that it's composition. I can guarantee you that does somebody have a question? No, okay. I can guarantee you that if you follow just a few of these rules, you can improve your photographs tremendously. I am the perfect example of someone whose photography has improved tremendously, knowing some of the basic rules of composition. So, as I said, I hope you'll speak up, ask questions. Some of the photos I'm going to show you today, almost all of them are mine, but there are a few at the end, a couple that are not. But you'll see sometimes some combinations of some of the rules, not just one. And rules are really subjective. So I want to hear what you think. If you have a question or a comment about any of them, whether you like the photo or don't, please speak up. So what is composition? Composition is the arrangement or placement. Just checking to make sure my mic is on. Arrangement or placement of visual elements of a photograph to make it more appealing or interesting for the viewer. And why is it important? Good composition can take a boring photograph and make it amazing. It draws the viewer's eye and attention to the mood and emotion you're trying to express with your photo. So what are the rules of composition? There are many, and I'm not going to cover all of them. Just a few. I think you can be overwhelmed with rules, but there are a few basics that really work well. The first is the rule of thirds. And this is the one that I use most often. You can see in the lower right left-hand corner. Basically, what you do is you divide your viewfinder into 9 equal segments. The image is divided into thirds, both horizontally and vertically. The interesting aspects of the image are placed on those lines. This rule is often used in landscapes with the horizon being placed in the top or bottom third of the composition. But I use it in actually as many of my photos as possible. Some cameras even have a grid option that will display the rule of thirds to help you make your composition. Now, the rule of thirds works here because the cowboy's eye, right in here, intersects with the left vertical line, and his mustache is close to the bottom of the horizontal line. And I don't believe that you have to put the feature right on the line. These are just guidelines to help you. Now, my examples are mostly portraits, but you'll see the rule can work on all kinds of subjects. This is upper left is a photograph that I took in Tombstone at one of their events. I actually got probably the most really good portraits that I've ever taken at one time at that particular event. But this is just one of them. But you can see he's off center. His nose and eyeglasses are right on that line or close to that line. And that really helps the visual aspect of the photograph. Now, the one on the right is a little bit different. This one I took at White Stallion Ranch at an Arizona Highways photography workshop. And I actually used a tripod for this. I rarely use a tripod, but for this one I did. And I set up the tripod so that I could get the saguaro flowers set up and then see what came in to feed. And this beautiful hooded oriole flew in, and it was just a kind of a lucky capture, but at least I was ready. Little fellow on the left, his name is Colton, and I think I took him at a movie set that Jerry and Carl and I went to quite a long time ago. But he is pretty much set up in the center, but really what helps this particular photograph is the fact that his arm is coming up from the left, so it's not a perfectly straight on. Doesn't look like a pose photograph. And the one on the right, she's off center. Her eyes are kind of on that upper rule of thirds. And this one was taken at, I think, the Anza days over at Canoa Ranch. So what we're striving for in our photos and the composition of our photos is balance. And balancing elements in photography becomes important when you frame your shots. If you think back to the rule of thirds, you'll remember that I explained how placing the main subject of your photo off center can create a more dynamic photo. And I think you saw that in the examples that I showed. That's because asymmetry makes a photo more appealing to a viewer because it causes visual tension. The only problem with the rule of thirds is that it can also leave wide open empty space in a photo, which may make the scene feel empty. In some instances, this may work very well for your image, but if it doesn't, you should try to balance the visual weight of your subject by including other objects to fill the empty space. The two main techniques of using balance in photography are classified as formal and informal, and I'm going to show you examples of both of those. Formal balance. It's pretty obvious in these photographs. There's symmetry. One of the contrary things about the rule of thirds is in this photograph on the left, if it's a landscape photograph, you really don't want to put your horizon or your horizon, what would be a horizon line, dead center in the photograph. But in this case, it really wouldn't work to set it up any other way, because what we're looking for here is also the reflections. So in this case, the horizontal is right smack dab in the middle. Now, this actually is the photograph that's behind me as I'm doing this Zoom. One of my favorite photographs from Africa. And you can see that pretty much the horizon line is dead center in the photograph, but that's in order to capture the reflection of the zebras, or zebras as they call them over there, in the photograph. And then the last one on the far right, this was taken at Tucson Botanical Gardens. And although it's not perfectly symmetrical, it's pretty close to being symmetrical. And interestingly enough, we'll talk about this in a later, as a later rule. There are 4 bottles, whereas usually an uneven number, and there are 4 zebras here too, by the way. And there are 4 bottles. Typically, for good composition, you look for an uneven number, but in both of these cases, I've broken the rule in a lot of ways. Okay, informal balance is a little less obvious form of balance in photography, requires more attention. It's a concept that can be difficult to be specific about because it can be achieved in a variety of ways. Informal balance occurs when dissimilar elements balance each other out on each side of the frame. The size of each element can be irrelevant, but more often than not, it's better to have a larger element juxtaposed with a smaller element or elements to make good composition. A well-composed photograph using informal balance is usually more appealing to look at compared to a formally balanced photo. Now this one, Mama and her baby. You know, some of these you think that I posed these subjects, but I did not. But one of the things on this trip that I really tried to focus on whenever I could. In some cases, I wasn't able to really, it was like grab the camera, grab the shot, and you don't really have time to really compose a shot. But in most cases, the number one thing I was trying to do with my photographs was worry about the composition and get a well-composed photograph. And I think it definitely worked in this case with Mama and her baby. Here on the right, this photograph was taken on a field trip to the Lost Barrio in Tucson, a fantastic shopping street with really interesting stores. And I just love this entrance, the tile work and all of that. And typically I try to take straight on shots of the Tucson, on the Tucson windows and doors trip. But what made this really interesting to me was the stairway that comes down from the left. So it kind of throws it into a little off balance for me. I had somebody ask me if this was a composite, and it is not. This was a scene I actually saw, and I think the composition in this, it would be more perfect if the tree weren't in it, but you really can't take the tree out. So, but the animals compose themselves for me. Okay, leading lines is another rule that I can make a photograph really interesting. I'm going to go to the one on the right first. You can see the road that we were traveling on in our vehicle. The zebra is crossing, but what makes this really more interesting is the fact this hyena down here in the right-hand corner drinking. So it's kind of balanced itself, including with the leading lines. And there's a safari vehicle right back there, just waiting to come up too. The one on the left was taken on the Anza Trail on a bird photography field trip that we did down at Santa Gertrudis Lane. And I heard we were walking in the direction they were riding, and we were ahead of them, and I heard the horse hooves clopping behind me, and I turned around and grabbed this shot. It just happened that it worked out really well, and it worked out kind of for leading lines too, but it was kind of a lucky shot, but I'm glad I got it. Diagonals are really strong in composition, and you can really create a dramatic effect. The photograph, this is a film shot, obviously, of Monument Valley. And to me, what makes this really a powerful photograph is this very strong diagonal line coming down with the shadow, the butte, and then the shadow. And it's balanced by the mesas off here on the right-hand side, and then the clouds. So to me, that's a really well-balanced shot, but using the diagonal. The photograph on the left and on the right is at Tohono Chul, and every time I'm there, I take this photograph because it changes sometimes. And I love, number one, I love the color, and I love the curve of the steps here, and the diagonal of the steps works really well in this photograph. Obviously, diagonal is strong in this one. This is taken at Rancho de la Osa. Oh my goodness, a long time ago. But number one, I loved it because of the colorful chairs, but it also lent itself to a really strong diagonal composition. Perspective or viewpoint. We typically tend to take our shots when we first start out straight on. This one was taken at a Tucson Meet Yourself years ago when it was held in the La Placida area. And I was able to stand above this little girl. There was a mariachi band playing, and she was just, she was dancing like nobody was looking, just like the old saying says. And I was lucky enough just to capture her. And I really like the shadow here. Really helps to make the photograph a stronger photograph. So odd numbers, I talked about it briefly earlier. Usually odd numbers seem to give a photograph more balance. But this shot was a total accident. I used burst on my camera. Oh my goodness. A great deal of the time on the photo shoots that I was on. And so I have a series of about 5 photographs of these cranes walking across through the grass. And then the very last shot was this shot. And I just, I couldn't believe it when I saw it. I did not see any of my photographs while I was over there. I waited until I got home to be able to see my photographs. And I think my jaw dropped when I saw this one, because it was just totally an accident. And then we have 5 little boys in Tanzania. So it really, they didn't compose themselves for my photographs, but they were obviously interested in seeing the group that had just come into the village. I don't take I rarely take posed photographs. Just about everything that I photograph is a candid shot. Okay, so another thing that you can do to make your photographs really interesting is use something, frame your shots. This is down in Tubac, at the shopping center down in Tubac. And I thought this was a really good example of framing the view out there. This is my favorite view of the San Javier. This is from the back. And if you haven't ever taken the time to go around the back, and I think it's even more interesting than taking photographs from the front, because I love not only the framing here, but I love all the layers of the different areas of the building. You can see, I mean, there's like at least 4 that I can see here. And anyway, I highly suggest that you take a little time and go around to the back. You really can't go into the plaza here. I think that's for the priests, but you can stand out here and get some fantastic shots, as you can see. And I'm trying to remember where this one in the, I think this was down at Rancho de Los as well. But framing your shots is definitely a way to bring focus to a subject. And then something a lot of people are kind of nervous to do is really fill your frame. I use a bridge camera that has the equivalent of a 600 millimeter lens, and I can push it out even farther than that if I need to, but it allows me to take photographs. This guy on the left was down into Tombstone as well, and the camera is small. It really allows me to kind of sneak into areas and get people photographs, and they totally without them knowing. And I love this photograph, and I often, when I see it, it just makes me wonder where he was, where he was mentally, what he was thinking about, where he was. Just he was so deep in thought that he didn't even have a clue that I was taking his photograph. The one on the right was taken at White Stallion, one of my favorites from that trip. The cowgirl and the horse had a very deep relationship, and it really is obvious from this photograph. I have photographs of them that are, more taken from farther away, showing more of her and more of the horse. But this one, I think, really says something. I've had several people. I have this photograph on my Redbubble website, and I've had several people comment that they just absolutely love this photograph because it just tells a story about their connection. So a big question: do you take the picture horizontal or do you take the picture vertical? And it's got camera manufacturer to blame because the camera is designed to be held in a horizontal format, but you can see that it really depends on what it is about your subject that you're trying to feature. In this case, on the left, it would be the cross and the bell. On the right, it just, you can see the bell, you can't see the cross, but you can see the little angel statue. And my preference on this photograph is the one on the right, but it could vary. So be sure you try. I see people sometimes with their cell phones taking pictures, and everybody wants to hold the cell phone horizontal. And I have to, every once in a while, I have to say, no, turn the cell phone to vertical because you're going to get a better photograph. So, and they go, oh, I never thought of that. Now, obviously, color has lots to do with composition. The butterfly on the right, what is really striking in the butterfly photograph here on the right is the fact that orange and blue are complementary colors. And so that's really a striking combination there. But that was totally accidental. I didn't really realize that till I got home and really started going through the photographs. But I thought that really makes a statement with the blue and orange contrasting. This is at Tohono Chul, I think, on another field trip. I like the one on the left. It was a great, we went up, did a field trip to the botanical gardens, and it was like they set this whole thing up for photographers because I thought this was really cool. Now, we're seeing a couple of rules in here. Beside color, we're seeing diagonal, which makes for a strong photograph. But it's balanced, it's asymmetrical, but it's balanced. We've got more little pumpkins down here on the right-hand side and the stronger one on the left. So it's a very well-balanced photograph, but it shows a lot of color. So I've thrown a lot of stuff at you, and I'm going to put up some other photographs for us to discuss. And I'd like to hear what rules you think they are represented in these photos. And I don't want everybody to be quiet. Thank you for being quiet during the early part, but now it's time for discussion. This photo, actually, my son-in-law took this photograph, and it's my very favorite photograph of any that he's ever taken. It's just absolutely remarkable photograph, I think, to even be able to capture this. These are snowy owls. This was taken in Maine, and I just love it. The backlight on the upper owl, the diagonal of the two owls works beautifully. I mean, everything about it, composition wise and artistic wise, really, it just blew my mind. And he took it with a bridge camera. Here's another one of his. This is the Nubble Lighthouse in York. And I can see all the noise in it, but I think the composition is really phenomenal, and his patience and chance to set up so that the full moon came up behind the lighthouse, I thought was just really wonderful. I don't remember where I took this, doesn't really matter, but color obviously is a big part of this. Do I have somebody that wants to comment? No, okay. Color obviously a big part of this. It's
Linda?
Yes.
I would also say there's a strong diagonal here.
Yes, exactly. Thank you, Jill. For sure. But it's really, it's balanced by all the little guys over here on the right-hand side. But, and I think the lighting, I think I took this in somebody's backyard. Now that I think about it.
Linda,
But the lighting was really fantastic. Yes.
would you also include the rule of thirds in this?
You could, yes. Yep, certainly. Yeah, very good. Now, there's no rule that applies to this photograph, but I had to put it in here. I took this picture, obviously, at the Desert Museum, probably, I'm gonna say something like 23 years ago, with my first digital camera, which was a 2.8 megapixel Olympus, pocket camera. And I don't know whether anybody else has ever gotten a photograph like this at the Desert Museum. But what made it fun was the group was lying around, and then this little guy right here in the back, he walked up and he just snuggled himself right down against that other javelina and made himself comfortable. So I just felt so lucky to be able to grab that shot. It was totally unplanned. I just happened to be at the right place at the right time. And that's a lot of photography, as we all know.
Well, Linda,
Yes.
I think actually the rule of thirds applies here pretty well. If you looked at the long horizontals, you've got
Yeah,
javelina eyes probably almost on each line.
that's right. Yeah.
And even here on the left, it's a little bit more weighted over here,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
not exceedingly so.
Very good. very good. I hadn't really looked at it that way, but you're absolutely right. I
And you've
just-
got an odd number of hobbies in there too.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, it was just sort of a mind-blowing observation when I was there. And this is the last one I'm going to show. Wally Watson took this photograph in one of his Tucson Doors and Windows trips, and he poses his people for the group photo, and I love the way he composed this photograph. It's really, it's asymmetrical, but it's really well balanced. And I asked Wally if I could use this photograph in this class, and he said yes, because his group photos are a whole lot better than the ones that I take. I'm lucky to even remember to take group photos when I do my trips, so I give him a lot of credit for this, but I really like that. Okay, so I'm going to, I hope the few ideas that I've given you today will kind of be in the forefront when you go out to take your photographs. And especially if any of you are new photographers, or I think this is really important information. Your images can improve really, really fast. I am a great believer in concentrating on composition when you're taking your images, if you can. Sometimes you can't, but if you have the time to be able to compose your photographs, then you can really improve them by keeping some of these ideas in mind when you're taking them. And of course, rules are made to be broken, as Pablo Picasso said. So, all right, I'm going to stop the share.
Well, one thing that might help, Linda,
Yeah.
on a lot of cameras, on a lot of the newer digitals, you've got the option to throw a grid in your viewfinder,
Exactly.
which is usually rule of thirds grid or someplace close to it.
Yep,
So that helps a bit with composition.
it does.
And then you've always got post and
Yeah.
your crop tool to
Right.
improve your composition.
It really would be better if you were able to do it while you were taking the photograph.
Sure.
But yes, you always do have the advantage of being in post-processing. But
Yes.
okay, let's see everybody. Good. Okay. Great. All right. You can unmute yourselves and tell me your critique of the class. And if there was anything particular a point that you wanted to make as well. Steve has been great adding his viewpoints here.
I think it was a really good presentation, Linda. I think
Thank
it
you.
covers literally the basics of composition and the use of color. So I think if anybody had any real questions about how to utilize it, you pretty much answered those. So.
Oh, very good. Thank you. Thank you.
I agree. It was a great learning experience for those of us who are new at taking pictures. As an artist, I've taken pictures my entire life, but I've never thought about it's basically point and shoot.
Mhm.
And try and get everything in that you want to get in, and learning this that there's photographs and then there's artistic photographs, and learning the artistic portion of it. Linda, thank you very much. It's I don't have the words.
Thank you, Monica.
And now that I know I have to kick Monica out of her family photos so we can get that odd number,
Okay, Tom. You know, Tom, I don't have it, and I need to have you send it to me again, because I did a stupid thing and all of my emails disappeared. And but the photograph that you took at the Celtic Games of the
Oh,
Oh,
the
one of the
woman,
hammer-
yeah, the woman thrower.
Oh, yeah.
That, I mean, that would have been a great example to show for composition as well. And I don't know whether you were thinking about composition when you took it, because it was, I mean, it was just taking the action, but the composition that you ended up with was wonderful. So,
Of course, I was thinking about that. Yeah, and I was also thinking about it was good to be 200 yards away from her when I took the picture. She could have
Yeah.
tossed that hammer at me and done some damage.
yeah, yeah. Well, I'd love to have, I want to have that again so I can use it in my next presentation.
Okay,
I like Jean's, how do you feel about about what Jean was asking earlier before I found a way to get on here about doing these things as workshops? Because what I would probably do this, I've got 2 versions of this. And the other one there are more rules, and I tried to sorry. There's Cooper. He's usually really good when I'm on these things, but he couldn't resist. It was a big truck.
You might have seen Monica's cat.
Linda, what's your definition of holding these as a workshop? What is a workshop?
A one-time presentation,
Okay,
not within a context of a whole series of classes like this, where it was set up for 5. I've thought this in the past, and I know Jean, we had the 10-week class, and then he narrowed it down to 5 weeks with separate workshops for things like bird photography, because that's really kind of a special interest
yeah,
area. But I think that I don't know how long I've been doing this composition one, but way back when he started setting up these things, I said, I want to do composition. I want to do composition because I really think that it's definitely one of the most important things that you can learn to improve your photographs. And I can tell you that just learning the basic composition rules my photographs are 1,000 times better than they were when I joined the camera club. Now, those first 3 that I showed, those were luck. There was no thought about composition in any of those. It just turned out to be really lucky. In fact, my dad saw the one in the center of the smelt fishermen. That was in California, and I was obviously way up on a cliff shooting down. My dad saw that photograph, and he was a really good amateur photographer. And he said, "You took that?" So I guess he was impressed.
can I clarify the rule of thirds a little bit?
Yes.
I've always thought about the rule of thirds as being one specific point of interest within your photograph. But I think what you are saying is that it's okay to have more than one point of interest and try to place them at the intersections. Am I
Right.
getting it right?
Yeah, well, I think it just kind of is accidental that it maybe end up with 2 like oh shoot, well, I can't. I
Well,
suppose
the
I-
eyes and the mustache. You pointed out.
Exactly. And really the eyes are what you're shooting for in the beginning. And the mustache just happened to be there. So it was really, yeah, I probably shouldn't have even mentioned the mustache because was not really, well, it wasn't really the intent. You know, it just was something I noticed as I was putting this together.
And then I'll offer a comment. The biggest mistake that people do in landscape photography is what?
Horizon line.
Yeah,
Mhm.
make sure that horizon line is straight. Not
Oh,
tilted.
oh, thank you for post-processing. I was looking at some photographs. I finally cleaned off one of my memory cards off my camera and found stuff going back to last June. So a lot of it had been, I'm going, oh my God. And there were a whole bunch of them that were tilted just about like this.
Mhm.
Because people don't, you're right, absolutely right. A lot of times, and I find this when I'm teaching my SIG in the camera club, people have their photos are a little off balance, and it just is just something that they don't think about when they're taking the photograph. I try to be aware of it, but I still miss sometimes.
Yeah, even though you think about it, it's really hard to, through the viewfinder, make sure it's correct.
Right. Now my camera actually has a level,
Yeah, that helps.
but
I use the rule of
Even-
third lines a lot of times. It reminds me, even if it's just to remind me to make my picture right, because otherwise you kind of drift to put it towards the center.
Yep.
And then it does help you to remind you as a reminder, and it would do with leveling your photo too.
yeah.
So,
Yeah. Anybody else?
by the way, I'm in Yuma and it's terrible over here. The
What is
dust-
it?
The dust and the wind in Yuma.
Oh, it's getting windy here too.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's getting windy here too.
But I would say one thing, Linda, if people are new to this, I think the best advice is just keep shooting. And have fun with it too. I mean, you can get so serious with this that it takes the joy out of it sometimes if you're not careful. So yeah, but it's just experience, and pretty soon you're going to find yourself composing things in the viewfinder almost naturally
Yeah,
as you shoot. So
definitely practice. Practice.
That's
Yeah.
one of the things I was wondering about is especially with those of you who have been doing this for ages, not to make you feel old, but just that you've been doing it for a long time, is how do you keep from getting to the point where you look at a photograph that is an absolutely gorgeous photograph of perfectly what I would consider an awesome photograph, and you look at it and just pick it apart. Do you and you just mentioned that you have to keep the fun in it, and how do you displace the negativity of your own product when you're taking photos, or not taking them, but looking at them afterwards?
Afterwards. Well, oh man, I don't know how many gazillion photographs I've taken and run through my computer, but I just, mostly I look for things that are out of focus. Those go fast. Those are the first ones to go.
Yeah.
And then if I'm really trying to save space on my hard drive, then I'll be more critical about the composition of the photograph. But, you know, mostly what I do, the kind of photographs that I'm taking now is I'm taking bird photographs out my back window because I have a whole lot of really interesting birds that are coming into my yard. and the bird photography field trips and that we're doing. There's always something, even if we never get a good bird shot, there's always something to photograph. And those are just fun because it's just fun being out with a bunch of people who are fun. And, you know, so that's how I keep that fun. I don't typically go out with my camera and just go out to take photographs. I just am not doing that. But maybe after, I don't know, after I get sick of sitting in my house. Although I don't spend a whole, my dog will tell you, I don't spend a whole lot of time at my house.
And he lets you know every time you show back up, right?
Yeah, I'm pretty busy.
Yeah.
So, but this has been really fun. Thank you. Thank you for your comments. I really appreciate that. And I think I agree with Jean that I would do this composition probably 3 times during the year, at different times in the year, so to get more people. Because I am a big believer in just knowing a few of the rules, because I can guarantee that photos will get better. Just having even a couple of them in the back of your mind when you're out shooting.
Yeah, just
Okay,
just a thought, Linda.
Mhm.
You know, it seems like the course we're taking right now is a good overview course. And it probably needs to be continued. But then you drill down into, you know, specific areas like composition, for example. I probably need a course in how to do aquarium shots.
How to do what?
Aquarium shots.
Aquarium
I
shots.
was in the Birds Aquarium, and it was a disaster. I couldn't get, you know, the light right, the speed right, you know, so.
Yep.
So I have a bunch of blurry fish that are going to get eliminated, but.
You know what? I'd say we did an Odyssey field trip years ago. Carl Sparfeld organized up to Scottsdale. And photographing in the aquarium was really hard. And I'll tell you, Phil Rock, I think Phil's not on here, but Phil Rock, I believe, was taking video with his cell phone. And his videos were fantastic.
That's what I experienced too.
Yeah. So, you know, you never know, but I agree. I know the aquarium, taking photographs, the light is so odd.
The dogs are barking all the time. You're trying.
Yeah, I want to say one of the secrets, Linda, is to get up against the glass.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And you have to put your lens, if you've got a lens hood, like a rubber lens hood, you can extend that, but that'll
know
help
what? I
cut out
have
the
one.
glare. But you want to get right up against the glass.
Okay.
Great. Thanks, Steve.
So you're not going to get any reflections off the glass that way.
Right. Oh, very good.
And you're going to get, and mostly, I should say the aquariums themselves, most of them are pretty well lit on the inside. Where you get the fall off is where you're sitting in back someplace and trying to shoot, so.
Oh, okay.
And then never
Oh,
use a
great
flash.
Yeah.
I shouldn't say that. If you're up against the glass, you can. Depending on where your subject's at, you could probably use flash, but a lot of aquariums kind of frown on that because the bounce is going to blind everybody behind you.
Yeah. I was able to get a few stills, but Phil's cell phone videos were phenomenal.
Sure. Cell phones are a lot more forgiving than some of the,
Yeah, well, even
large
this is
cameras
even
we
in the
use.
early days of, you know, when cell phones weren't really thought of as cameras.
yes.
You know, and they were really good. That was a great trip. I think that's something we should think about doing again. That was a very fun trip. I lead enough of them though. Get somebody else to do it. 12 or 15 a year is enough.
But yours are always so interesting.
Thank you. That's the idea.
Yeah.
I like to lead trips that interest me. So,
the
and I think that's the cool thing about Carl Sparfield was, this is totally off the subject of composition, but Carl Sparfield, and a lot of you probably don't know him, but Carl did all the field trips for years and really had a great variety of subjects for field trips. But once he was unable to lead them anymore, and it came under the realm of Sue Rock, who does a fabulous job. It included more people, and the people tended to, like Patty and I enjoy doing the bird photography trips, but we've also kind of branched out. We're doing the Bisbee by bus, and she's doing the Presidio and Mission Gardens. And so we kind of have other areas that we're interested, but Sue Rock loves doing the mural trips, and Michelle does the streetcar trips. And so we've got more people involved. And before the shutdown, we did 60 field trips. We offered 60 field trips.
Well,
And that blew my mind when I added them up, I have to tell you. But that's a lot of trips, but it's only because there were more people participating in the organization of the field trips and getting their special interests for field trips. One of the field trips I'd really like to do, and I'm not quite sure how to handle it, is I would love to go to the Desert Botanical Garden up in Phoenix and see the Chihuly exhibit. Now, GVR is offering that trip, but it's like, I think close to a couple of $100 to do it. And GVR sometimes, and pleasure bent tours sometimes offer, like they do the whitewater trip and that sort of thing. And the thing that we are able to do, because ours are definitely no frills trips. I mean, you have the bus and you can bring your lunch. That's as much glamour as you're going to have. But at least for me, the advantage of these trips is that I don't have to drive.
That's true.
Before the shutdown, and so probably at least 3 years ago or so, I kept telling Patty, I said, I really wanted to go to Bisbee. I think we should do a Bisbee by bus. Well, of course, it wasn't possible for 2 years, so because it was hard to get anybody to go. But at least this year we're finally getting to do it, and we'll see if it's a success. And I think there are still a couple of people keep dropping in and out of all these different trips and stuff, but they seem to be filling up when people drop out. But anyway, so enough of that. So thank you all for coming. I hope you enjoyed yourself. I look forward to, oh, by the way, you can display, I know we've got new people, trying to remember who they are, who are going to be in charge of hanging our photographs in the club since Jerry has moved away. And so love to see some of your photographs hanging in the club. If you need a frame, I've got a slew of frames for 11 by 14s, which are about the right size for the club. So I wouldn't mind loaning a couple of them out to people if they don't want to spend the money to get a frame. So just let me know.
Or do they hang frameless, such as metal prints and canvas prints?
I think they're frowning on the metal because they're so easily scratched. And you can't use glass. You have to use plexiglass. So, but if you've got a frame that, and the frame should be, I use metal frames, black metal frames, white mats. And I've got a slew of them. That works for, I don't fool with colored mats. The white mat works for any of the photographs that I've ever put in there. So, but 11 by 14 and a 16 by, I think it's a 16 by 20 frame works really well. Okay. Thank you all for coming. Good to see you all.
Thank you, Linda.
Nice
Thank you,
nice to see
Linda.
some faces. All right. I better, let's see. Stop recording. Here we go.